Welcome to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. My name is Andrew Frazier, Business Growth Pro and CFO, and I'm here to talk about leadership and influence with my special guest, Dale Caldwell. And he's a real Renaissance man. He's done a little bit of everything, had a lot of influence and leadership experience throughout his career. Having been a management consultant at one of the top firms, having graduated from an Ivy League school, and it's Dr. Dale Caldwell. He just got his PhD not too long ago. He's been in education, a big proponent of education and, being involved in school districts and school systems and schools. And he's really demonstrated his leadership across the board in many different ways. So that's why I'm really excited about having him here with us tonight. He's an author, and we're going to talk a little bit about his book, Strategic Influence, and how that fits with leadership. And in addition, he's a TV show host. So he runs the TV show Family Business World. Welcome, Dale. Thanks for joining me this evening.
First, Andrew, it's always a pleasure when a Renaissance man calls you a Renaissance man. So Andrew is a Renaissance man, an MIT grad, someone who has so much experience with small businesses and leadership. So Andrew, it's an honor to be with you. And I had you on my show. You did an amazing job. So I'm going to try to do the same tonight. So hopefully we'll get people thinking a little differently.
Excited about some of the things that you're working on. As if you didn't have enough things to do, you're always coming up with new things and new perspectives, and really having an impact and sharing your knowledge and expertise, not just locally but statewide, and even having national influence. Tell me a little bit about your background, where you're from, what you've done. How did you get to where you are now?
Well, and as you know, in my book, Intelligent Influence, and my consulting firm, Strategic Influence, I always talk about people's influences, that we're all products of our influence. And so I reflect on my own. So my mom and dad, my dad's 86 and my mom's 85. They've moved in with me. My dad knew in March with Dr. Martin Luther King, was at Selma, the March on Washington, the Freedom Summer. And so I grew up around that. My mom was a teacher for 50 years. So I grew up around this idea of helping people, of human rights, of education. And so I had an opportunity to get my a degree in economics from Princeton, and then an MBA from the Wharton School. And I worked at Deloitte Consulting for 11 years. And that really, I learned more at Deloitte than I did anywhere, is how do you look at problems and really kind of break problems down to their component parts. And so with that consulting experience really led me to doing a whole bunch of other stuff. So, and we'll get into that, a little later.
Okay, excellent. So no, definitely want to get into that. And we're going to start off talking about your book and your premise and the things that you've developed in terms of influence, and both the Intelligent Influence, your book, and then also the methods that you use through Strategic Influence. Having written a book myself, it's a challenge, and you learn a lot, and it teaches you a lot. So when you wrote your book, Intelligent Influence, why did you do it? How long did it take? What was memorable about the process?
Well, Andrew, first of all, again, one of the things I like about your book and how you do things is you explain things in easy to understand terms. You really put the framework around it. And I think that's one of the goals. To kind of continue the bio, how I got started my book is, after I was at Deloitte Consulting for 11 years, I left to be the first executive director, the founding executive director of a group called the Newark Alliance, working directly for Art Ryan, the CEO of Prudential Financial, Ray Chambers, the philanthropist and former owner of the Nets and the Devils hockey team and basketball team, and Tom Kean, the former governor. And so the focus was on education and economic development. Then I left and became the deputy commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs in the McGreevey administration. And so I always wanted to have a senior level experience in the public sector, the private sector, and the nonprofit or civic sector. And Andrew, what that did is it gave me real insights into leadership, because I said, well, what are the common principles around leadership in each one of the three sectors of society? And so in doing that, I started writing this book on leadership. And I'm an etymologist, I like to study words. And I looked up Webster's definitions of leadership, command, and authority. And the word influence was in each one of those definitions. And so it sent me on this path more than a decade ago of understanding the word influence. And I realized that we do what we do, think the way we think, and accomplish what we accomplish because of influence. And so the examples that I use are English accents, that no child's born with an accent. They could be born in Brooklyn or London or Johannesburg or Sydney, Australia, and they develop an English accent, a very different one that stays with them the rest of their life. So people should think about, why are they a Yankee fan or a Red Sox fan? What is their favorite food? What is their culture, their religion? So you start to see this influence permeates all that we do. And so when you're looking at leadership, your leadership style is so much a part of your influence, and how you lead other people is really based on influence. The one final thing I'll say is that as I study this, I realized that the command and control leadership style, where people say jump and people say how high, is dead, because we've grown into this society where diversity is the rule, not the exception. It used to be everybody had the same background. They looked the same. They were the same gender, the same race. So you didn't have to worry about people's different influences. But now we have women, and we have people of color. We have international people. We have young people. We have 5 generations. And so you need to understand their influences. And that's the foundation of the book, is really helping people understand their influence, leadership skills and abilities.
Okay, no, that's excellent. And one of the key things, if you're going to be a leader, the first person you have to lead is yourself, and you have to understand yourself. And understanding where you are and how you got there and what has influenced you is an important piece, because if you're going to influence other people, like you said, most people aren't you.
Right.
So,
exactly.
By using your methods, it can help you be able to influence people. And I know you have a model that you've developed in your book. You want to share that for us?
Yeah, and great question. And so I really wanted to put together a 4-step process. And so this intelligent influence, my consulting firm is called Strategic Influence. So I use this framework to really help people strategically and organizations strategically use influence. So step 1 is what we call influence awareness. So really help to take people through this process of how they've been influenced and in what way they've been influenced. So they have to know themselves and know their influences. And Andrew, you would be amazed at how few people really understand their influences. One of the mistakes we have in this world is this idea of the self-made person, that I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps. Nobody helped me. I'm a billionaire because of me. Well, that's ridiculous. And there's always someone who helped, and it's important for us to understand that. Once you understand that, the second step is influence impact. What is the impact of the influences that I have? How are those influences preventing me from being the leader that I need to be? How are those influences helping me? So we help people break that down. The third step is influence management. Once you understand your influence weaknesses, what is your management plan to really turn those influences around so you can be successful? And then finally, influence maximization is really all about there are 3 elements of successful influencing anybody. Could be your wife, your girlfriend, your boss, your coworkers, whoever. The first is credibility, that you have to be credible for anybody to even listen to you. The trouble is, a lot of people rely on credibility alone. They said, well, I've been a bank president for 30 years, so you listen to me. Well, that's not, credibility is just the starter. The next is creativity. Once you're credible, you have to be interesting in their mind. You have to get in their mind's eye. And that's not enough. The third is connection, that you have to connect with their influences. So in order to maximize your influence, you have to make sure that whoever you want to influence or whatever team you want to influence, you have credibility, you have creativity, and you have connection. And the beauty that this 4-step model has worked with the 8th largest law firm in the world, with Kellogg's and Viacom and Marriott International, doing work with Under Armour, as well as small family businesses, which we'll talk about. Whenever there's human interaction, Andrew, this model applies.
Okay. No, definitely. And it takes a minute to think in terms of your framework and understand the influence. But one thing that really helped to bring it home to me and appreciate how everybody's influenced differently, and how we're all in our own little world was, you're executive director of the Rotman Institute for family business and entrepreneurship. And one of your first speeches, you talked about intelligence influence and how it impacts family businesses. And I remember you gave one example about music. And I think that clearly illustrated. So you want to share a little bit about kind of that piece?
Yeah, Andrew, and I do that, all the time, and it's amazing how it resonates. And what I say is, in addition to talking about accents, I say that I know what the best music in the world is, and actually, the research shows that the best music in the world is the music you heard between ages 14 and 25. Doesn't mean you don't like other stuff, but that's when your brain's developing. You first fall in love, and their emotions. Every one of us has songs that take us back. Well, the reality is, our view of the world is really our music. And so if you're going to lead other people, you need to understand their music. If you want to sell to other people, you need to understand their music. The mistake that a lot of leaders make and a lot of businesses make is they basically try to force people to hear other people's music. Example being, I love Kool and the Gang, Jersey group. That's my favorite group. I grew up around Kool and the Gang. If I did that, I'd be forcing everybody to listen to Kool and the Gang. And some people love it. Andrew, I know you love Kool and the Gang, but a lot of people wouldn't. And so we wouldn't expect to change people's favorite music. So why do we expect to change people's leadership style? Why do we expect to change their consumer taste? What we need to do is understand their music. And so if you're able to the people who are successful understand other people's music, and they really can create a symphony by working together. And that really is the foundation of the framework. And so thanks for mentioning that. And so the other thing that I'll say is that my dad, who has been very active as a Methodist minister, and we were at a conference where they were talking about diversity and people of different sexual orientations and races and genders, and he was speaking, and he asked me to speak for about 3 minutes, and so I talked about that music analogy, and it was a very diverse group, and I just said, we're products of our music, and two women who happened to be white came up to me afterwards and said, that music analogy resonated with me because here I am, I'm very open and into diversity, but my dad was a racist. And I could hear my dad saying that my dad's music sometimes plays in my head, and I have to get out of that. So as we deal with Black Lives Matters and trying to change the way people, it's important not as an excuse, but to understand that people have this music. We've got to help them appreciate the music of diversity, of inclusion, and of equity. And so that music analogy is a very powerful tool to get people who don't agree to come together.
Right. No, I mean, a super example. And anybody who has kids probably has a little bit of appreciation for that because, I know my kids rag on me for playing like old school rap music in the car. Right. But, since I'm driving, they got to live with it. But so maybe that wasn't real good leadership. But, what have you found, as far as dealing with, you have a child and, what have you learned through the process? Because I think that's been a good learning experience for me. What about for you and for others?
Well, yeah. Well, through that process, but also, talking of being a dad, I have a 15-year-old daughter will be a junior in high school, and it really reinforces this influence model. The worst fear that we have as parents is that our kids will fall into the wrong influence, that they'll hang out with people who get them to do bad things, and so it's the same thing. One of the things, Andrew, that I tell for the assignment I give people when I'm doing training is that I ask everyone to find somebody they don't like. Or don't know, and find out who their influences are. And I guarantee that one, it'll help them become more adept at this intelligent influence model, but they will also learn the influence reasons why people do things that some people may think are stupid or rude or wrong, that there's an influence reason why people do that. So it helps you understand your marketplace, your customers, the people you lead, the people you work with, the people you report to. But it's a learned competency that you have to really begin to practice that. You have to think about that. And so I before the pandemic, I was in New York all the time. I used to ride subways and really try to think about the influences of the people on the subway. Why is he wearing what he's wearing? Why are they doing what they're doing? And so I've become pretty adept at really quickly kind of assessing influences and being able to connect with people in a way that that I couldn't before I understood this model.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. So now, making it personal,
Mm-hmm.
who has influenced you and how?
Great. I of course like talking about other people. I don't talk about myself, but but obviously my mom and dad who are here, have been big influences. They always helped me believe that I could be anything I wanted to be. And as basic as that sounds, I come across so many people who didn't have parents like that, who didn't tell them that they could buy Europe if they wanted to, that they could do that. And that really made a big difference. The other thing is growing up with a father, especially who's a civil rights leader, who's been, they had Duke Ellington in his church, and it's a picture of my dad and Dr. King and other things. You start to really think about why you're here on this earth. What is your responsibility to make a difference? And which is why I've been involved in the public, private, and nonprofit sector. And so I'm obsessed, in addition to business, I'm obsessed with really minimizing poverty. I think in the United States, there's no reason to have poverty because if people don't have to care about the poor, but if the poor have jobs and money, then the rich become richer. So, and one of the reasons, Andrew, that I'm excited about family businesses is that the more I've delved into family businesses, the more I realize that most of the family businesses actually treat their employees better than any other sector, better than the public sector, certainly better than the big companies. And they also give more back to the community. So I look at family businesses and entrepreneurial businesses as an opportunity to give people chances with jobs that they wouldn't otherwise have. So I'm using my passion in business and passion for making money, but also to have a social passion. I couldn't do anything that didn't help to make society better just because of the influences of my parents. Obviously I'm big in tennis. I was on the board of the United States Tennis Association, so I always admired Arthur Ashe and his classy style. Nelson Mandela, I think, is one of the people that will be the legends of history. And you always learn from all these folks that, what did they do and how were they so selfless? And so when I start having my own pity party, I start to realize that, my worst day is better than so many people's best day. And so I think that helps to inspire me to do more.
So now, using your intelligent influence as a way to help entrepreneurs and business owners, I believe it's part of the strategic planning process that you take them through in terms of developing their business. So what's the first thing that you do when you come and meet with a business owner?
Well, a couple of things. So one, I would say that this process, is something, it's almost like those actors. It's, they say, I play a dentist on TV or something, but I actually not only created this framework, I actually use it in my everyday thinking. And I use it for the public sector, the private sector, and the civic nonprofit sector. And so when I'm sitting with a client, what I typically do is that this influence model applies not only to the leader of the organization, it applies to the influences in the organization. So I take people through that, what we talked about, that this is the framework, and really talk about, we'll say, ask, strategically, what are the influences that are impacting your business now? Where is, what are the, it's almost an influence SWOT analysis, an influence, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And those are influences. And what that does is it opens people up to think differently.
Okay.
When I'm speaking, I often tell people that, I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm just trying to introduce you to yourself or trying to introduce you to your business. And that's why I like a lot of the stuff that you do, Andrew, because you really break it down in a way that the business, it's not just about, okay, how do you make more money now? There's so much that goes into that so that you end up making more money. So when we're starting to do that strategic plan, and frankly, I do a lot of SWOT analysis because I think it's amazing to me how many business owners haven't really thought about that. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of step one. So one, get them comfortable with their influences, do a mini SWOT analysis. But three, really talk about what they think the problem is. Because so often, and you and I have talked about this, the problem they think they have isn't really necessarily the problem that they really have, right? And so you got that, but you've created that comfort, and then you begin to talk about it. And so I'll give an example of one of my clients, one of my family business clients, and really Debbie Schaefer. So if any of you are in the Trenton, Lawrenceville area, Mrs. G Appliances is one of the best known appliance stores. And Debbie Schaefer, the third generation woman-owned business, they're more than 80 years old. I was hired when they were trying to make a decision about moving from where they were on Route 1 because the landlord was going to build some other stores there to another place, which wasn't as visible. So we went through this process of strategic planning and talking about the goals of the business and what's important for the business. Who are your customers? How are you going to reach out to those customers? How are you going to market to them? What operational changes need to take place? What should your facility look like? And so if you go, it's in Lawrenceville on the business Route 1 in Lawrenceville. If you go into Mrs. G, I'll guarantee that's one of the nicest appliance stores that you'll ever walk into. It's really a beautiful appliance store. And so I feel point of pride because I work directly with her. Actually, I spoke at the Princeton Regional Chamber on intelligent influence, and she was in the audience and liked what I said so much, she hired me on the spot to really help her with this transition.
Okay.
So I was mentioning to Andrew yesterday that one of the areas that we worked with is sales, and I can talk a little bit about that too.
Sure. So now, working with her, I know that her company was one of the family businesses of the year last year. And, she was extremely impressive when she came up and spoke and talked about her journey and, being one of the very few women business owners of that type of business and her experience at different conferences and other places. But, what would you say the biggest thing that you've done for her, and what was the impact?
Well, one of the biggest things. So first, let me say, so she was our keynote speaker last year. I think she officially won in 2012.
Okay.
And I actually was working with her and actually came to the Rothman. These are the Family Business of the Year awards. This is our 27th. And so I had come to Rothman as a consultant with her long before I knew anything about Rothman. I never would have thought I'd be the executive director now of the Rotman Institute at Fairleigh Dickinson, of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Fairleigh Dickinson University. And so as a woman-owned business, she always talked about some of the challenges she faced, but she has also been an advocate for small businesses as an individual. And so we can talk a little bit about that. In fact, she single-handedly fought the internet, the fact in New Jersey that the internet sales you didn't have to pay taxes on internet sales. So it would put the stores at a competitive disadvantage. And
right.
So the area that we worked with was sales. And so, she had actually six men as their sales folks, and none of them knew what anybody else was doing as far as performance. So they were just kind of going about their business. And so one of the things that I talked about, I went through the influence model, and I said that it's important for your salespeople to influence each other. And if you do that right, you can create a competitive environment. They were virtually all sports fans and believed in competition. So I actually, for about 2 years, every month we'd have a sales meeting, and we went over the sales numbers. And Andrew, they increased sales by 10%, over $1 million, because of using this influence model, helping each person understand their own influences and how to influence their customers. And so there's a tangible return on what this framework can do, and really in any aspect of the business.
Okay, no, that's great. And working with businesses, one of the key things that I do is help them have key performance indicators, help them measure what they do, because you can't improve anything without measuring.
Exactly.
And, so being able to bring that expertise to the sales side. And, one thing you mentioned was, you create a competition between them, because that's the culture and that's their influence. And one thing I find is, a lot of businesses have difficulty having their sales team or salespeople deliver the way they need them to. And especially the ones that only have one salesperson. And, one of the things about that is probably partially the competition, because when you're the only one. Have you worked with any businesses like that, or what has been your experience?
Yeah, well, it's very much so. I mean, in fact, most businesses have an element of that. One of the things that's the most powerful thing about the influence model, Andrew, is that when people understand they're a product of their influence, it almost separates them from personality. So
Hmm.
one of the challenges you can make, so if you did the competitive sales stuff and you didn't do it the right way, you can create a very negative environment.
Right.
Where Andrew, you beat me, I hate you because you beat me, and you cheated and you did this. But when you think about influence and you understand that I can catch up to Andrew if I put the right influences around me and I strategically use influence to be successful, then it's not so much about I hate Andrew, it's about I want to build myself up. And so when you do that, and so working with a number of small businesses, and I did the mission and vision for the city of Newark for Raj Baraka when they first came in office, and he had his folks. And so using the same strategies, people are people. And so when you're working with businesses where there's often a problem, the thing that that a lot of people don't know is every small business problem is, the root cause is a communication problem of some type. That there's a communication breakdown, a communication between employees, between bosses, and that communication impacts the leadership. And so by working with businesses around that, working with businesses in manufacturing industries and retail, in sales and public sector, there's a consistent pattern of how people interact with each other the best in the best way possible.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense, and that's a great example. So Mrs. G's, you helped her increase sales by over $1 million, and helped develop her sales team, and that was just in 1 year, right?
That was just in
So
1 year.
and they continue to grow. So not only is what you've taught them helpful in the short term, it permeates throughout the organization and helps them grow in the future. And that's one key thing. You're always talking about business owners need to bring in help sometimes because they don't know everything. There's so many things you need to know in business, and bring in help. Yes, it costs money, but if you get good help and they bring you the right things, you have the benefit of that help for years to come. And it's a no-brainer if you look at it from that standpoint. So no, that's great. You were able to really come in and make a difference there. So what I want to do now is we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, as the director of the Rotman Institute, where you focus on family business, veteran-owned businesses, we want to learn a little bit more about that. As business owners, that's a resource. That's a potential resource that we can take advantage of. So definitely know what you do for business owners and know how to help. So a lot of businesses are having a lot of challenges now, and the need is more than ever. So tell us a little bit about what Rothman Institute is all about and some of the things that you're doing for entrepreneurs and business owners during these challenging times.
And Andrew, let me tie the stories together, because the other part of the story with Mrs. G is that not only did we generate $1 million, the suppliers, the big known appliance stores, increased the cost of doing business. So that $1 million really didn't translate into $1 million of extra profit. And that really helped me understand that small businesses are often taken advantage of from big business, overlooked by government. And so there was an advisor, someone who's on the advisory board of the Rothman Institute, was a client for my company's strategic influence. And he said, "Hey, Dale, they're looking for an executive director. Are you interested? At least meet with the dean." So I met with the dean. The dean said, the Institute is, there's a real opportunity. And so in October of 2018, I can still have my consulting firm, but I took over the Rothman Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And our mission is to really research, support, and promote family business, support small businesses with a focus on family and veteran businesses. So in many ways, we have become a voice of entrepreneurs, of family and small businesses in New Jersey and New York as well. And so what do we do? Well, there are two main programs. One is our Family Business Alliance, where we have family businesses from all parts of New Jersey who are part of our Family Business Alliance. And so for that, they have access to all sorts of family business programs, experts and others, people like you, talk to them. We have a coaching session where we take some of the CEOs. As you know, being a CEO of a small business is a very lonely job. You know, sometimes you can't talk to your family. So it's good to talk privately to other people who can give you advice about. And so some businesses have been saved because of that session. Okay. We also do consulting. We've done a lot of strategic planning with many of the businesses, operational planning, even some leadership training. So that's on the family business side and the small business side. As you mentioned, I have a TV show called Family Business World, website familybusinessworld.com. You did a great job on one of my shows. So we really have been very big in the family business space. In fact, nobody else is really in the space the way we are in New York and New Jersey. The second piece is our program called Veterans Launching Ventures. What we do is we help veterans or family members of veterans develop business plans, help to develop and start their business, and consult to them to the point of even connecting them with the places that can get the money. So that Veterans Launching Ventures program has been around 10 years. The Family Business Alliance has been around 30 years. The third piece, and one of my favorite pieces, is really around policy, public sector policy. One of the things, as I was watching the Nubian Flavor Restaurant and others, is I wrote a paper and a white paper on a program that I'm calling Entrepreneur Zones. And Tim Sullivan, the CEO of EDA, likes the concept of this administration. It hasn't been implemented yet, but the whole concept is we've heard of opportunity zones, which are really real estate plays where you get long-term capital gains if you invest in real estate in urban areas. And sometimes that works real well. Sometimes that accelerates gentrification. But it's really about Nubian Flavor Restaurants. It's about getting capital to the businesses in the urban parts of the state. And so what I say with this entrepreneur zone is that and even a city could do this. So those of you who are into politics in local cities, you could actually do this in your city where long-term tax credits can accrue to businesses or individuals that invest in these businesses in the community. So it starts to infuse cash into these businesses. There's some amazing entrepreneurs in the urban parts of New Jersey, but they don't have enough capital to help them through the difficult times like what we're facing now. And so we can talk some more about what we're doing to really help small businesses during this pandemic.
Okay, no, it's important. Definitely doing short-term things to help them now, but also policy, because long-term, it's policy that's needed, and not a lot of people are able to do that. So it's great that you're able to be there and advocate, because a lot of the big companies, they have people that they're paying thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to influence policy to help them be more successful. Whereas, you've got all these small businesses and nobody's really speaking for them at many times. So, definitely at where you are and how you're able to do that is valuable. So, definitely taking it from there, really using it to help businesses. So what's next on the horizon? I know you're always thinking about new things, new ideas. What can we expect from you in the future?
Well, and a couple of things. So one, you're absolutely right about advocating for policy. The other thing I would say, Andrew, that I've learned that being at a university gives me some credibility and some influence that I wouldn't have if I just had my consulting firm. So I can actually. I've been part of the governor's Restart and Recovery Commission with Tim Sullivan for Main Street. So really been advocating for small businesses, really trying to push the envelope to help restaurants during this incredibly difficult time. So many of them are going out of business. We have on Fridays, and you participate in our Friday, Family Business Friday Zoom at noon call. So every Friday at noon, we have a free Zoom call with experts. This Friday, we actually have Altitone, the head of the Regional Small Business Administration, the group that handed out the PPP that may have, so if people are interested, they should come and sign up for this free webinar. We had Andrew, you did a great job on it. So one of the things that we're really looking at is really pushing this idea of entrepreneur zones and pushing the idea of small business, of this being a small business state, a small business country. You know, one of the problems, just to build on what you said, is I love my union brethren. You know, I love my union brethren, but unions have extra money to hire lobbyists to lobby for unions. I love my brethren in big businesses. Big businesses have extra money to hire lobbyists to lobby for them. Small family businesses don't have that money. They don't have lobbyists. So we're really playing, and I'm really becoming more and more of a voice to really advocate for those. And if anybody doubts this, look at what happened with the pandemic, that the politicians were blindsided by this high unemployment because small businesses are the employers of this country. And that as we look at things like poverty in urban communities and other things, the answer are really investing in businesses so the businesses can hire people locally and the economy can be improved. So I'm on a tear, Andrew, to really kind of yell and scream in as nice and positive way as I can that we need to wake up as a society and start investing in small businesses. And so it's nice to hear some influential politicians are starting to get the message who didn't really understand how important small businesses were before. So that's been a big thing. The other thing that I'll say is that years ago, I'd started something called the Black Tennis Hall of Fame in 2008 to really honor Black players who never were in the history books. And that inspired me recently to start the Black Entrepreneurship Hall of Fame and the Black Inventors Hall of Fame. And, you know, we were talking about, you know, the Black Wall Street and the race massacre there, you know, long before people started to really talk about that. But why is that important? It's important because I want young people to know that entrepreneurship in urban communities with Black families has been part of the culture. And that, and some would say that being an entrepreneur is really, you know, what we're called to do. And so we really want to empower, and as you know, the world is changing. So the 30-year jobs at General Motors aren't going to be around. You're not going to have the 30-year jobs. Entrepreneurship is the way to go. So we're really becoming very, very strong advocates for entrepreneurial mindset. And I do a lot of lectures on the entrepreneurial mindset, starting in middle school, you know, going up until you're 90.
Okay. Excellent. So yeah, so all that stuff is important. Look forward to seeing great things. You know, before we close out, one thing I always do is really break it down into so that people can take something away that they can use immediately in their life and their business. So if someone's going to start looking to implement intelligent influence, what are the first three things they should do? Good.
And so the first is understand your influences. Write them down. You know, take a pen and start to write down, you know, the influences related to your leadership style. You know, what kind of leader am I influenced to be? So that's kind of step one. Step two is once you do that, set your goals. Really be very specific. What kind of business do you want? What is success to you? Because, you know, Andrew, you and I can start telling people what they should be doing, but if it's not in their heart, it isn't going to happen. And so you really have to kind of understand, once you know who you are, where is it that you want to go with who you are? So that's step two. And then step three is how are you going to measure success? What is your measurement of success? How are you going to measure whether or not you're successful? What are the metrics you're going to develop? And so if you know your influences, if you know what your goal is and you know how to measure it, you're going to get there. And the challenge I found is that people are missing one, two, or all three of those things, and they're getting into business. I want to make money. I want to make a lot of money. Well, who are you? What are you trying to do? And how are you measuring it? So those three things are I find to be key.
And I think that's great feedback. You know, I've been participating in your stuff, and I think the first step is very eye-opening because until you actually write it down and think about it, there were so many more people who influenced me than I would have really thought if I hadn't really, given it the time, written it down, really thought about different things. And it humbles you because, there's so many people that pour into you and support you throughout your life. So, you definitely never get anywhere by yourself. Dale, I thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and join us this evening and just share some valuable things that every business owner should know about and could use to be more successful in what they're doing. And that's really what it's all about.
Andrew, thank you. You are, really, you have an amazing way of helping businesses achieve their goals and maximize their effectiveness and profitability. So it's an honor to be on your show. It's an honor to support you. We hopefully will continue to do some consulting stuff together.
Yes.
To really help people, achieve their goals. So, so this has been fun. This has been really a lot of fun. And I hope, you can find, me at Rothman. And so Rothman at fdu.edu, Rothman at fdu.edu. And we're happy to help in any way we can.
Okay. Excellent. So this is our show, and look forward to catching you next week.